So thanks to the previous panels, chairmen, as well as the participants for their beautiful and very informative panels. And welcome to the 20th seasons of the Political Science and International Relations Congress organized by the International Relations Departments of the Karadeniz Technical University. Hope all of you are doing well during this pandemic. And so we have 90 minutes and 6 presentations. So this means we have 15 minutes for each presentations. If we keep it limited with the, I think the 12 and 13 minutes, then we will have some extra time for the discussion as well. Please watch the time. Try not to exceed the time, because I don't want to drop you and cut off your presentations. Our first presentation's name is, let me check it. Yeah, just a second, please. Yeah, our first presentation name is the Culture and International Security in South Asia, Challenges and Multi-Sectoral Action Plan for the Preventing Conflicts, which will be put on the stage by the Nath Ganguly. Hope I present your name in the right way. Please go ahead and take a stage, Anna.
Very good. Here in India, it's 2 o'clock here, and then I guess it's morning still in Turkey. So this is Nath Ganguly. I belong to India, North India, Delhi, Noida. So what I'm going to do, because I've specialized in South Asian studies, so I am going to present my topic today, which is about cultural and internal security in South Asia, looking at how the challenges are and the kind of solution that we are looking at. Mostly, as I understand, it's a 90-minute session, so I'll just take 10 minutes, not exceeding my time. So I'll just share my brief presentation, and then I'll just run it on slideshow. Just let me run it 1 second. I hope it is being shared. Right, is it visible? Yeah, is it visible? Right. So I'm just starting the slideshow in a large scale mode. Looking at this very important topic of cultural and internal insecurity. The point is that culture is not common to South Asia. Is the slide still running? Yeah. Okay. Fine. So can you see the slide? Should I continue?
Yes, we do, yeah.
Right. So culture is not a very unknown fact all over the world, but looking at South Asia as a region, I think we can confirm that no other region in the world has seen so much of ethnicity and so many differentiation in different groups rather than South Asia. And the reason why South Asia is still very insecure, or there's a lot of hostility, or there's a lot of instability in individual countries within South Asia and South Asia as a large, is because of the ethnicity and the ethnic conflicts. Now, every South Asian country is facing a major challenge of security, and that security is not just security in terms of military security, but security in terms of human security. So human security and traditional and non-traditional security all go together, we know that. Culture is a very important component that binds every country. It is one of the glue. It's like one of the attachment to all of us. We all like to interconnect in a globalized world, so we can relate to each other's culture, because there's so much of commonalities and so much of differentiation also. Our theories have focus on the area of cultural divide and cultural integration, and also the differentiation. So we know Samuel Huntington has written at the time when World War ended that, you know, the world is going to see a clash of civilization, which is connected to the idea of culture. But when he wrote, he did not focus on Eastern part of the world. He did not focus on South Asian part of the world. All he focused on is on Western and non-Western civilization clash, looking at Christianity and Islam. But he missed out on the part that later, you know, many other scholars have highlighted, that how the region in the East and Far East and South Asia are all going to have a lot of impact in global politics. So culture, while on the one hand is integrating someone, but the reason is today there's so much of hostilities between identities. And the identities is leading to global phenomena, global discord. So we can see culture now today has started being used as a weapon more, or rather we can see that though we connect with each other on food and dance and music, we do not connect with each other on when it comes to identity and our ethnic groups and our ethnic needs. So there's a lot of problems within South Asia that we see, because South Asia is a vast community. It's not a very narrow, though it looks small on the map, but when you go to South Asia, the entire 8 countries, within each 8 countries, there are multiple ethnic groups. And that's why it's a melting pot of what we understand in politics. It's a melting pot of indigenous, then you can say urban cultures that are all coming in hybrid, but then they're all, trying to get detached from each other some way or the other when it comes to politics and culture connect. So the reason why South Asia as a region is facing so much of insecurity and the internal security, I'm not talking here about in the global fight between 2 groups. I'm talking about internal security, which is actually having a lot of implications in the global scenario. A lot of things are there in the history of South Asia: invasions, multiple invaders, colonization, multiple colonizers. Most successful one is the Britishers. Decolonization and self-determination rights. In that process itself, there's a lot of conflict. So now today we are basically trying to also fight over economic resource and other human security on land, territory, economic resource, and also on the upholding of our cultural identity as the most powerful, powerful group that can control administration, that can control politics. So world wars and Cold War has both had its impact in South Asia. Though in World War, South Asians did not have too much of a role to play because they were only slaves or they were only part of colonial structure. But in the Cold War, the identities and ethnic groups played a very intense role in rather dividing the region, not bringing the region, because that is how the entire ideological war between the capitalists and communists has divided the region. And that is what we are seeing the impact in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in India, in Nepal, in Sri Lanka, everywhere. Though Sri Lanka has, eliminated the Tamil films, but still today, mostly UN agencies are working on basically how the Tamilians have suffered and the human security. And rather in certain period of time, again, it will become volatile, which is started again. So we see the wars, global wars and the Cold War has rather divided the state more on ethnicity and more on ethnic disturbances. Economic deprivation and poverty, as I've said, less resources and the resource crunch is there in South Asia. And rather, the South Asian governments do not know sometimes how to capitalize on those resources. They're not collectively coming forward together. So it's a lot of problem of not having a common understanding that only technology and basically only on economics you're connecting, yes, but you're forgetting to connect on politics. And that is what SAARC was, though it was devised with the idea that no political issues, conflict will be brought into the table. SAARC today has completely declined in its prominence, but SAARC needs to come up with the way that political solutions and ethnic cleansing and ethnic struggles have to be addressed at certain point of time. You cannot avoid discussing on that. I would say that, we have studied how Max Weber, Riggs, all of them has talked about how pluralism is very important for politics, how pluralism is important for administration, how basically societies are divided into prismatic, fused, and diffracted. Sometimes when I analyze South Asia, we see that yes, there is a lot of fused structure and somewhere it is prismatic, but we have not come to a diffracted model where every institution is taking responsibility for security. The democracy that we are talking about in South Asia is failing day by day. Everywhere South Asian democracy is not able to address the democratic goals. So there is a huge lot of problem in South Asian way of handling issues or how they are handling the cultural needs, the group who are culturally very vibrant, but what are the needs and how to integrate them, how to mainstream them. I would look at a lot of issues are there. I cannot put on all these issues, but so many cultural struggles. Now I come from India, and within India, there are hundreds of conflicts going on in different parts, whether it's north, east, south, and all. We have in the northeast region, which was always trying to get mainstream, even yesterday or day before, we had group conflicts within 2 ethnic groups. So we have in Pakistan, where are conflicts about Mujahideen. We have in Afghanistan, it's always an ethnic violence and ethnic battle, except in Cold War, it started changing. But again, we see with Taliban taking over, it's again boiling down to ethnic clashes. Again, we see in Sri Lanka a history which we never forget of Bloody Sunday, and a history that we never forget of how Tamilians were never given a representation in the democracy in Sri Lanka. In Nepal, we see the Terai region, most prosperous region, but still not included in constitutional, not being given administration. We see a lot of issues in South Asia. We'll see that's the reason South Asia's internal security is itself not strong, and there is no collective and common cooperation on politics and ethnic matters. So terrorism has become more intense, and every day we fear that there are smaller and guerrilla warfare or smaller attacks, rather than not going into a bigger battle, but there are smaller battles every day which is seen. Innocent lives are lost. Insurgencies, though, has been addressed by a lot of governments, but there are still insurgent groups in South Asia. Dissenting communities are rising in South Asia, which are also having now global implications. You can see a lot of international community of South Asians who are rising up to this dissenting, dissenting issues on how the governments are managing their own country. Then we have the national security and peace. Now, every day Indian government thinks out how to secure its own territory. Every day other governments across South Asian countries are basically trying to work out on the security perspective. And that's why the military expenditure and the military focus is getting larger and larger day by day in South Asia. South Asian countries are not committing, though the commitment is there on cultural safety in terms of how you are having a lot of Ministry of Culture, but mostly the focus is about archaeology, culture, dance, music, crafts, which is very important. And that's where we also connect with each other. But every time we say noted down, but I
Anna, I think we have connection problem, so your voice just cut off. So I think Anna's internet connections is not very well because of the Indian infrastructure conditions. So when Anna gonna have a connections again, so we will give him a voice. But until that time, so I would like to go ahead and so do the second presentations. Our second presentation titled as the dynamics of the asymmetric threats in the Noso conflict in Cameroon, which will be presented by DjidjouaGarba. Anna is here now. Hi, Anna.
1 more minute and wind up. I'll just take 1 more minute and wind up because I don't want to take too much of time.
Anna, yeah, we just like lost the connection with you.
Yes. There was some.
But right now everything is fine. So just go ahead and complete.
I'll just take the last 1 minute because I don't want to. So the reason is that cultural safety and security is very important to South Asia and rather all over the world. We only see one global example of Australia, which has tried to make cultural safety framework, but that is because Australia has a lot of Aboriginal tribe. But somewhere South Asia is missing out on doing the same in terms of securing their cultural groups and ethnic groups. And so we need some kind of cultural safety framework, because if we don't let our cultural minority groups feel that there is a safety policy and framework, then they essentially do not get a lot of rights and an access to a lot of things like health and well-being and rather economic accesses. So we have seen in South Asia, one thing very focusing on is on trade and economics and culture. But still, I think while we have an arbitration council on trade and commerce and other matters in economics, we could not manage an arbitration council in politics. I think that's an urgent need of South Asia, to end the ethnic cleansing and end the ethnic violence and identity crisis, which is connected to security. And then safe health and safe workplace, which is a UN goal of safe nations, is not going to be achieved at all if we are not going to look at how to bring all of this. Lastly, just one more point is that there are certain possibilities in cooperation that we can see. Culture is so much interconnected to politics, but we have to see about culture and politics, not to avoid discussing on this to integration. We're looking at government who are always ignorant or neglecting on these matters. We should see about public policies that should be oriented about cultural safety and integral security coming together, not separated. And then democracy can only be established into democracy in South Asia when this focus area is addressed. I think since I've taken a little bit of more time, I'm sorry, and thank you so much.
And thank you very much for these beautiful presentations, as well as also like not exceeding the time. And it was so informative, at least for me. So I would like to pass the second presentation, titled, as I mentioned, as the dynamics of the asymmetric threat in Noso conflict in Cameroon, will be presented by the Issa Garba. Issa, stage is yours, please. Take a ground. Issa is here. I don't know. I didn't check it. Let me check whether the Issa is here or not. From Cameroon. Actually, I didn't see the Issa. Maybe he's absent right now. Göktuğ İsa yok mu? Ben mi göremiyorum? Sen
Hocam ben de
musun?
göremedim. Ben de arıyorum. Tam adını
Bakarak
kontrol
değiştir.
edecektim. Belki başka bir isimle bağlanmıştır.
Evet. Ben de göremiyorum şu anda. Yani herhalde yok kendisi. Okay, so
İhtimalle söz alırdı hocam burada olsaydı.
Evet, evet. So this means we will have more time maybe for discussion. So the other presentation, named as the Revolution, Chaos and the Seeking Stability of Libya, Historical and Structural Analysis, will be presented by the Meradi, Wafae. Meradi.
Evet hocam. Yeah.
Okay, please take a ground.
Do you see?
We see your PowerPoint right now.
Do you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My presentation titled Revolution, Chaos and Seeking Stability of Libya. And we have signing this outline. First, we must begin with the introduction. Then we must talk about brief history of Libya's security, the legacy of Gaddafi area. Then we must see origins and actors of the Libyan conflicts, order from stabilizing Libya the local way, and we propose the economy as an essential starting point to a political solution and conclusion. For introduction, we can say that Libya's post-Gaddafi state structure has been formed by now state, by multiple actors, and while in some cases being legitimated and funded by the state itself. We can say that the root causes of this paradoxical situation can be structured by investigating the security culture inherited from Gaddafi's regime, and particularly its we can say it's emphasized and ignored security institutionalizing and the effort of the competing armed group to dominate that area of influence in the absence of coherent state structure. That which pushed us to ask this problematic. After a decade of chaos, can Libya be made whole? If it is possible, which are the options for its solution? For the first area, we must talk about the brief history of Libya's security, the legacy of the Gaddafi area. In this case, we must take attention for the military cap. The military cap, also known as a Fatih revolution. This cap put an end to the Sanusi monarchy, which was enabled to rule the country effectively by breeding corruption, and put the Gaddafi, we can say, monarchy. And when in this area, the first oil boom took place in 1922. The revolutionary regime had already consolidated political power. You say that in this area, you see just the politics solution, the politics problem, but in this situation, there is a boom of oil, and a war of nationalism had started in the Libyan economic. In the second area, it's the economic, bringing almost all aspect of economic life under state control and leaving almost no space for private apartment in the following years. So the second area is the Green Book. The Green Book, Gaddafi came up with the first volume of the Green Book, which was going to be the guidelines of the revolutionary future decade. But unfortunately, where is it in the Green Book? It's not in reality. For example, you can see democracy is the superfluous of the people by the people, without any understanding, and all resources that country has, in fact, belong to the people. Moreover, people are in charge of countries' administrative and bureaucracy institutions by means of popular congress and committee. Then on the other side, we can say updating the revolution. This updating of the revolution, Gaddafi now found himself surnamed by economic sanction and the diplomatic isolation by the West, particularly by the United Nations. So the United States policy on the sale of technology parcel of the oil and aviation sector in Libya could also be like a problem and big problem of Libya. After this problem, we can say catching up with the new millennium. In this area, we can say that the continuation of the United States inevitable sanction on the country turned out to be an insurmountable barrier to economic development in Libya. The procedure for the families of the local victims did not permit the United States government soften its relation with Libya right away. So it became much more difficult for the United States to keep its unilateral sanction in place after the settlement of the local issues and the lifting of the United Nations sanction. So Gaddafi's immediate condemnation of the September 12th counter-terrorist attack and support for the United States invasion of Afghanistan considered it justified act of self-defense, enacted the rapprochement between United States and Jamahiriya. For the second point, we can talk about pardon. I return in order to give a resume or in order to give conclusion of the first point. You can say that Gaddafi has acted as if he had no real power within the formal structure of the government. However, in reality, he had consolidated all the power in himself by creating different security and intelligence organizations that unfortunately were directly accountable to him. So you can say, you can turn now to origins and actor of Libyan conflicts. we can say that the Libyan conflict contains many actors and the same origins, what we talk about historical origins, but the actor is different. There is historical factors, there is domestic actor and foreign actors, and mitigant factors. So starting by historical factors, we can say that under Gaddafi rules, there is what I say, Libya has been divided between north and south. City-states in the northern coastal area have been dominated by conquerors from elsewhere in the Mediterranean, where the south nomadic tribal, we can say Tuareg, Tubo, and any other identity. So in the northern side, we can say that under Gaddafi rules, elite include people from historical or paramount families plus his own. The small and previously influenced tribal grass called the Gaddafi successful importance. So the technocrats stayed out of politics. They will generally campaign their capability in Arctic by studying any of the world's best universities paid for the best state. We talk about domestic actors. Domestic actors, there is political groups and security forces. If you talk about political groups, you can talk about political elites who had done well under the Gaddafi regime, including them some import of foreign goods, governing contracts, and some technocrats. The local politicians played a course. Libya's cost represents local interests, such as the migrant business community. You can talk about tribal leaders from important families and the local level, head of nascent political parties of native ideology, including political Islamists, and highly educated Libyans. These highly educated Libyans play a more important role, waiting to exercise political freedom for the first time, including highly educated Libyan women who had more in commune with Italian women of their generation, than with Libyans living more traditional lives. And for security forces, in the security forces, there is multiple actors. For example, remnants of the Libyan army, a head of militants, local Salafist Islamist extremist and terrorists, international terrorist group, present guards with tribal ties, criminal gangs, including king barbers and smuggling. For the foreign actors, you can say that France, the United Kingdom, and the United States were all deployed engaged in the air war to oust Gaddafi, therefore functionally destroying his ability to contain the revolution at the end of the conflict. This and the other European power largely related and did not seek to exercise control over an event in Libya, and it is logically by constructs, regional axes develop favorite client based on mixture of ideological and geographic ties, like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates on one side, and Qatar and Turkey on the either helped fought the conflict by conflicting probably military support for their client. Qatar supports Islamists with money and military aid throughout Sudan, but Turkey engaged in a relationship going back geographically to Ottoman times. And for Algeria, and especially I am Algerian, for Algerian actors, this was a matter of protecting its border from terrorism and Islamic extremism, as well as reducing the risk of foreign military intervention. For Morocco, engagement proud with its enarmed equality in Algeria on Libya's matters. And when we talk about the mitigating factors, everybody knows that most Libyans appear to believe conflict is in neither their local nor nation interest, but the problem it's large. The problem is with ironically and unfortunately with Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, Daesh, provided to be a major material factor that enable international actors to bar their difference and work in community to promote a national Libyan political agreement, as was eventually reported in Skhirat, Morocco, with the help of essentially every regional and international actor with any relationship to Libya. We can say, and in some moment, order from chaos, stabilizing Libya the local way. In the local way, the three main components of stabilization are ensuring the developing of public services, stabilizing the economy, and providing security. This is the three main composing of stability in Libya of the local way. Order from the car, but unfortunately, a multiplicity of international actors operate in Libya with sometimes surprising level of corruption. Nevertheless, now the time for them collective agree high-level strategy, ensuring they have a bird's-eye view of efforts they are making to bring stability back tomorrow. So the economy, I personally will propose that the economy as an essential starting point to political solution. If there is no economy, you can't put a political solutions, you can't found a political solutions. So in view of additional pressures from the Libyan Chamber and Commerce and Business Council, you see that tropical basin and section with represented from the Eastern-based Financial Ministry have also agreed to activate a joint committee that will apply strict success standard for the financial institution of Libya. And you can say this together. Libyan output and 2020, you can say that in this area there is different of situation of oil bird. You can say that the oil output average of 4,000 million barrels in 2020. There is exceptional situation of oil revenues, and which is unlikely in out view. There is no importance of this oil, of this importance of the economy. Unfortunately, that's because the foreign actor and the other side of the country investigating of this is plain. We can say from this note that the oil black one not only costs Libya a lot of money, but also create heights for development plans. The second thing, the company has been active in ensuring that output capacity will be maximized in addition. That means it's not stopped in 2021, but 20, but in the end of 2022, there is impounding of oil. We can talk here about Turkey. Turkey's future in Libya will be a key factor in deciding the outcome of economic arrangement, as Ankara sees long term and would like to regain its economy further in eastern Libya. The point remains that Haftar will be central to the economic file and will seek to retain as much physical control as possible over all files. And for conclusion, we can say that Libya was close to precipitate the war between the Libya National Army and the Government of National Accord, could have escalated into a regional conflict, but a multi-front attempt. We can say that we could see that the Libyan political dialogue form, a national unity government will be formed and strive to adopt policy conducive to state and nation building, and we give some recommendations. Personally, I say that international intermediaries should also make sure that the middle ground wins out of Libya's peace process. Germany should leverage its privileged diplomatic position, be it with European partners, the United States, and more importantly, Russia and Turkey, to make sure that each and every foreign actor feels according in discussions and understanding the commune stakes. The second point, domestically also, that a middle ground candidate should gain the majority of support from the international committee instead of betting on self-appointment power. Libya does not need a cyber prime minister. It needs a cyber and not politician able to navigate the country complex social and political dynamics to lead the transition period with the help of technocrats. The third point, the third recommendation, Libyans have not voted since 2012, and the country's constitutional arrangement and electoral preparation might provide to be problematic, especially considering the fact the Libyan civil regime is faulty. And for end, it will also be a test for a national unity government and international unity green level countries new fund stability to improve its disasters human situation and implant much needed medical such as the COVID-19 vaccination campaign. This effort will be absorbing and will require international support. Thank you so much for your interest, and I give word to Erol Kalkan, doctor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to speakers on very informative presentations, as well as also time management. And our next presentations titled as the Terrorism is the Measured Threat to International Security will be presented by the Leyla Mustafayeva. Leyla, if you are there, please take a stage.
Can you see my presentation?
Not yet, we just see you right now.
Just a moment. I hope you can see my presentation.
Not yet, Leyla.
You should use a share screen part for your presentation. On the below of the screen.
Now you can see.
Yeah, you can see it right now, Leyla.
Okay. I'm Leyla Mustafayeva, a philosophy doctoral candidate in political science and lecturer at Baku State University. Before starting my speech, I would like to greet participants of this conference and great thanks to university administrator and organizer of this conference, and special thanks to Ms. Hülya Ercan. Now, if you please, let me introduce my presentation.
Please, go ahead.
There is no question that terrorism is neither exclusively Islamist or a new or recent phenomenon. Terrorism has many and diverse ideological motivations and a long history. Most terrorism experts would probably agree that terrorism is an ideological tactic used to achieve political change and in place since prehistoric time. It's neutral, although not necessarily acceptable, in that it has been used by militants embracing most political ideology for pacifism and host as well as liberal states, such as France and USA, Great Britain. Although no universally accepted definition exists, there's agreement about its main elements, and there's agreement as main elements that exists, terrorism is a street use of violence as politically or ideologically motivated, and the violence is best understood as violence used as a form of political communication. Also, modern terrorism follows the emergence of modern mass media, and terrorist violence has probably been used as a political tactic since time immemorial. The historical roots of the terrorism are ancient, and assassination Julius Caesar was the first terrorist act in 44 BC. These events created great for Egyptian pharaoh, and despite the aforementioned facts, the inclusion of the term terrorism is scientific lexicon dates back to French Revolution. And hatred against Turks National Terrorist Organization was founded in 1890 and in Tbilisi, and Armenian terrorist organization was engaged provocation and terror acts in Turkish consulate and embassies. Term terrorism means fear, which comes from word terror. From geographical point of view, terrorism is divided into two parts: local terrorism and transnational terrorism. Local terrorism occurs within a state, and the scope of violence is limited. And transnational terrorism covers more than one state, distinguished by its complex structure, and at the same time they operate a wide range of areas and promote their interests with extreme aggression and violent methods. Result of the process, globalization, terrorism became an important political issue. Different terrorist organizations use terror in a different way to achieve their goals. Previously, terrorism wasn't mass, but rather an individual character. Conspiracy of leaders, political and public figures was realized out by terrorists, and contemporary terrorism indiscriminately targets civilians. However, terrorist attacks can end dozens of lives, and it's not considered that problem of terrorism is one of the top list of problems that concern every political actor as a threat to the security of the state, and terrorism has already characterized as a problem in the modern world, which undermines social and economic life of state for strengthening of the issue. Transnational terrorism. Transnational terrorism is an inherently international phenomenon, as it involves attacks when the perpetrators are from a different country than the victims. Transnational attacks with a focus on international variables, for example, the presence of a border wall or islands patterns. Preventing terrorism. A central starting point of examining the framework governing global counterterrorism effort is the United Nations Combating Terrorism strategy adopted without a vote by the United Nations General Assembly. And there will be reflecting a baseline universal consensus and legitimacy. This was the first time that United Nations membership had agreed to adopt the strategic approach and framework to fight terrorism. The combating terrorism strategy is reviewed the update annually to reflect changing priorities by the United Nations General Assembly. In this way, the combating terrorist strategy remains a living document. This is illustrated by General Assembly, which was a link to consideration of the United Nations Secretary General's plan of action to prevent violent extremism. Combating terrorism strategy is a unique global instrument to enhance national, regional, and international effort to counter terrorism, including by strengthening cooperation between all key actors. Its adoption demonstrated not only the agreement for all member states for the first time to common strategic and operational approach to fight terrorism, sending a clear message that terrorism is unacceptable in all its form and manifestation, but furthermore resolved to take practical steps individually and collectively to prevent and combat it. These practical steps include a wide array of measures ranging from strengthening state capacity, counter-terrorist threats, to better coordinating the United Nations system counter-terrorism activities. National Global Counter-Terrorism Strategy. The strategy takes the form of a resolution with an exit plan of action comprising of 4 pillars. First is addressing the conditions conducive to the spread of terrorism. Second one is a measure to prevent and combat terrorism. Third one is a measures to build states' capacity to prevent and combat terrorism and strengthen the role of the United Nations system in this regard. Fourth one is a measures to ensure respect for human rights and the rule laws as a fundamental basis for the right against terrorism. The prevent strategy. The prevent is one of the 4 elements of conduct the government's counter-terrorism strategy. It aims to stop people becoming terrorists or supporting terrorism. The Home Office works with local authorities and a wide range of government departments and community organizations to deliver the prevent strategy. Prevent strategy responds to the ideological change we face from the terrorism and aspects of extremism. As a threat, we face them from those who promote this view, provide practical help to prevent individuals from being drawn into terrorism, and ensure they are giving appropriate advice and support. Works with a wide range of institutions, including education, criminal justice, waste, charities, and online and health, where there are a risk of radicalization that we need to deal with. The strategy covers all forms of terrorism, including far-right extremism and some aspects non-violent extremism. Preventing terrorism in Azerbaijan. In the Azerbaijan government actively work to deter, detect, defeat terrorist effects to move people, money, and materials across its land and maritime borders and within the South Caucasus. Azerbaijan law enforcement and security service conducted operations to disrupt and prevent terrorist attacks, arrest and prosecute suspect terrorists, and prosecute returning Azerbaijan suspected of joining or financing the terrorist groups fighting outside Azerbaijan. International and regional cooperation. Azerbaijan maintained membership in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and other international bodies, and Azerbaijan supports NATO, CT, interface as one of the alliance partnership for peace countries. Azerbaijan participates in NATO's resource support mission in Afghanistan, and where it deploys 120 peacekeeping troops and contributes to the Afghan National Army Trust Funds. State Security Service of Azerbaijan Republic implements complex control measures in this sphere, and security service not only fight against terrorism, but also struggle with armed groups which formed under radical religious ideas and implementing citizens in a group operating outside of the country. Looking through the legal aspect of the fighting with the international terrorism should emphasize that comprehensive approach to this problem demands including economic and political efforts by states. Security service not only fight against terrorism, but also struggle with the armed groups which formed under radical religious ideas and involving citizens in a group, operating outside of the country and looking through legal aspects of the fighting with international terrorism should emphasize that comprehensive approach to this problem demands including economic and political efforts by states. Terrorism is forefront of the threats to the national security, and in the world today, states control terrorism via bilateral and multilateral cooperation. Laws of fight against terrorism. Republic Azerbaijan was assigning the laws, the creation of legislative framework. The law established the legal and institutional groundwork for counterterrorism. It forces the Republic of Azerbaijan, coordinates the action of the agency, and sets duties rights for such agencies and citizens. Basic principles for combating terrorism should be considered to be providing legality, coordination of methods in combating terrorism, and the priority of protecting human rights of people, necessity of punishment for carrying out the terrorist activities. During the anti-terrorism operation, public should be informed about terrorist acts, and information on the tactics about anti-terrorism operation, information on people participating in operations, and may not be disseminated. Nevertheless, it should be underlined that the fight against terrorism began the years of independence. And simultaneously, Azerbaijan joined the UN Convention, Terrorist Financing Convention, formally the International Convention for Suppression of the Financing Terrorism.
Leyla,
yes. It's my conclusion. Yes, after gaining independence, Republic of Azerbaijan diversifies the activities various spheres with international organization and the anti-terrorist coalition. That's all. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Leyla. Thank you so much for these beautiful presentations. It was so informative, at least for me, as I say. So our next presentations is titled as the role of the track diplomacy in peace making practice, will be put on the stage by the Veronika İnan. Thank you very much, Veronika, and thank you so much. It was beautiful presentations, and also I thank you for your keeping up with time. Thank you so much. And I think Issa is here right now, so I would like to give him a voice. Issa, are you here now, right now? Can you hear me? He was here just like 2 minutes ago. Let me check it again. Issa, are you here? Can you hear me right now?
Yes. Do you get me?
Yeah. Hi,
Hello?
Issa. Hi, Issa. Yeah, we can hear you right now.
Okay, I'm fine.
Okay, so our Issa is going to be presented the dynamics of the asymmetric trade in Noso conflict in Cameroon. Take a stage, Issa, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator and all the panelists. Good morning. Hope you are getting me. It's okay.
Yeah, we can hear you right now.
Okay. So, how many minutes do I have to do the presentation?
15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the title of my communication is The Dynamics of the Asymmetric Threat in the Noso conflict in Cameroon. So, you know, there is that insecurity which is for few years now, that is, it has been affecting the two regions of the Northwest and Southwest, which is commonly known as the Noso conflict. So there is a continuing armed attacks and confrontation between the military, you know, and the separatist groups. So these are long-standing grievances of the Anglophones in the Northwest and the Southwest regions. It is a nationwide problem that emerged after the unification of the two Cameroons in 1961. So the Northwest and Southwest, or the Noso conflict, weighs therefore a dilemma of security in the national security diplomacy. That is, given the fact that these two regions are confronted to insecurity, there are other problems found in the other regions, like the far north region of the country, which is actually confronted to the Boko Haram insurgency, insecurity in that part of the country. So there is a few of the regions have been facing these insecurity problems. The eastern region, for example, is facing, the problem with the influx of refugees that are coming from the Central African Republic due to insecurity there. So the country is facing with three poles of insecurity, which is becoming a bit complicated for the state. So the two regions, which is our focus here, has been much often facing what they call a stay-home protest. That is, the separatists went on to preach on the stay-home protest, whereby they use that common concept, saying "go starve," whereby no going to work, no going to school, and they threaten the population for that. So violence and political activities ticked up during, especially the trial of Sissoco Julius, who was one of the leaders of the separatists. So when he was being caught in Nigeria in 2018, so his guys now went on to to protest for that. So according now to the immediate factor was that peaceful protest that happened when the government military shot at peaceful protesters, wounding many and killing several. Right. So now this was a desire by the separatists to create a republic, an imaginary republic known as the Amazonian Republic. So the separatists were structured into two main political bodies, both with arms wings, and then having some diasporas who were financing some of these groups in order to have arms and then carry on threats on the population and on the government. So according to Robert Thoms, we defined asymmetric conflict as a conflict which led two belligerents whose military power, tactics, and even strategy differ significantly. That is, it could be a conflict or war between a professional army and an insurgency, or even a resistance movement, militias more often with the status of unlawful combatants. So it is also seen as a conflict in which two belligerent resources differ in essence and in the struggle, whereby they interact and attempt to exploit each other's weaknesses. So we also say it could also involve, as said by Ekaterina Stepanova, who's in his article Terrorism in Asymmetrical Conflict, Ideological and Structural Aspect, who said that it could involve struggles such as strategies and tactics of unconventional warfare. So the violence has uprooted about more than 437,000 people from their homes and forced over 32,000 people to seek refuge in the neighbor country of Nigeria. So with at least 400 civilians and about 160 state security officers have been killed since the outbreak of this protest. Now, we are trying to examine here, that is, why has the conflict escalated so quickly, becoming asymmetric, thereby instigating peace and security challenges in the northwest and southwest region of Cameroon. By saying that, we went in to give some speculative answers to these questions. That is, we shall seek to determine whether recent tensions are solely the result of the greed and grievance motivations, as well as the reasons that has sparked the threat to be, or the conflict to become an asymmetric conflict. So the grievance aspect of the greed and the grievance theory has been used here. since we know that countries with certain socio-political cleavages are more prone to civil strife. So it should, however, be noted that the civil conflict which occurs now in Cameroon is as a result of the weak or the failed institutions that this country is, is experiencing for some few years now. So the greed and grievance theory now, as an explanatory variable instigating peace and security in the Noso conflict, shall constitute, or is what that is the paragraph that has constituted our first part of this communication. Meanwhile, the second part here, we focus most on the reasons why this conflict has escalated so quickly to become an asymmetric conflict. So under the greed and grievance theory as an explanatory variables, here we said that the greed theory here, civil wars are essentially market-driven. They're market-driven because originating from competition among elites over natural resources and from the desire for self-enrichment. We've seen many of these separatists going in to kidnap and to loot properties and then ask ransoms in order to enrich themselves. So we went further to say that they are typical, in states with negative economic growth, as to what the Cameroonian country is facing actually, with a very poor economic growth, which is a systematic poverty that is being felt by almost all the population. So the political and governmental and socio-economic leading elite, here the political protest intensified. Why? Because perceiving the marginalization, the violence erupted in these two regions, because they felt that knowing only English, going to the public services, whenever even though it is said in the constitution that the two languages are of equal value, French and English, but it happens that since they are the minority, when they are in public or when they go in for public service, and when they talk in English, they are being forced or they have been laughed at because sometimes they ask them to speak in French, and this has turned as a frustration to them. So based on this great argument, we could say that the civil war of this Noso conflict broke out because of that marginalization. So the separatists, apart from the material benefit that they want to have in order to have the control of that part of the country, since most of the resources of the country are based on these two regions. You have the Sonara, which is one of the public main revenue. The oil reserves is found in that part of the country. The agricultural, the CDC, which is the second employment after the government. That Cameroon Development Corporation is employing largely after the government. So the will to control these corporations and these entities also has led to the separatists to fight the government forces. So the desire for the economic self-enrichment will have been the motivational factor that led the separatist groups to fight the BR regime. So the grievance theory, therefore, often fueled by relative deprivation, polarization, and horizontal inequality relative to the discrepancy between what people think they deserve and what they actually receive from the public authorities. So these socio-political cleavages has grown up, and we even have the UN who estimate that the 3 million people out of the 4 million found in the Cameroon's northwest and southwest regions, these compatriots feel that they are not well treated in the national configuration of powers. So many compatriots of this part of the territory now have developed a deep sense of nostalgia uneasiness, frustration, and discomfort. We stand with one former governor in the name of David Abuem. According to him, it is that deep sense of frustration that has led this compatriot to seek for cessation. So in the capital, Yaoundé, they were humiliated sometimes because they were forced to speak, a barely intelligible and unintelligible French, often amidst laughter and jeers of other compatriots, which tend to frustrate them. So in addition to a great number of individuals in the Noso with that sentiment, appointment in the senior administration and the parapublic sector of the government also, for example, no longer correspond to a readable rationality as was being, a compromise when they were joining the French Cameroon to have the independence, whereby they needed to, divide the powers among these two compatriots, these two people of the same country. So the reason why this Noso conflict has escalated now so quickly to the asymmetric conflict, the determination of the government to employ the military violence to stop the separatists. When that conflict started, the government never wanted to sit and dialogue and really examine what was the real problem of these people. But the government went on with a false repression. They decided to solve the problem by military, military force. So the determination of the government to employ military violence to stop the separatist movement has transformed so quickly the crisis into an asymmetric confrontation. This situation escalated very quickly when militant secessionist groups led by Julius Ayuk Tabe, who proclaimed himself as the president of that of the imaginary or Republic of Amazonia, symbolically proclaimed the independence of a new nation called Amazonia Republic. So the nature of the asymmetric warfare of the Anglophone crisis now is transforming its model of governance, since they knew that in order to gain now the sympathy of the population, they made the population to dream by telling them that they are fighting a just cause, let the population be with them, because they were like trying to sell an image, an imaginary image that they will be independent and try to resolve all the problems that the BR regime has failed to solve. So we have the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Human Affairs, who said that more than 1,245 protection rights violations has been seen in the past 4 years in that region, physical and legal, tortured. So it has been recorded pertaining to the physical and legal protection domains, which the human right has been, talking about this. Right, the government is saying that the international NGOs are taken side, thereby discrediting some. We clashes now between the Cameroonian military and the separatist fighters that also led 3,000 deaths, many displaced, just from 2019 to 2021. We have 3,000 deaths and many displaced persons. Vulnerability has been further compounded by limited access to education for children due to a ban and attacks on schools by armed groups. Yes.
It's a time to please come to conclusion, okay?
Okay. So now the government denied not even the existence of the crisis. That's what even made the crisis to be to take another dimension. The fact that they refused to accept that there was a problem, they went in with a violence in order to solve it, has made that a fraction of the country to take and then to protest against the ill treatment that the government is doing against them. So in conclusion, we concluded by saying that the extravagant complacency that is of the BR regime with regard to the linguistic, political, and historical specificities of the Anglophone regions, which has not been taken into consideration, that is the main source of the Anglophone malaise, right? So over and above the economic and social factors. So we are recommending that a trust has to be established primarily before now with the government, the federalists and the separatist representatives, and then now they should go in for a talk and a neutral state. During the process, we are recommending that the international actors, especially the US, France, the UK, and the European Union and the African Union, should continue to encourage the government to dialogue and offer a funding and support for the talks. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Issa. Thank you for this beautiful presentation, and it was so informative. Actually, we learned a lot from your presentations. And our next presentation's title, The Factors and Dimensions of the State Involvement in Cybersecurity, the case of the Japan, will be presented by the Elif Nurcan. Elif, if you're here, please take a stage.
Thank you very much. Let me share my presentation with you, and I hope everybody can see my screen.
Is uploading. Yeah, we see it right now.
So my name is İlişkiler Nurcan, and I'm from the Meiji University Graduate School of Political and Science Economics. I'm a PhD candidate. Let me first start with offering my main thanks to everybody who is involved in this Congress. Thank you very much to everybody at Black Sea Technical University. And today I'll be presenting about the state involvement in security through the case study of Japan. So to begin with, today I'll be first doing an introduction by starting with definitions and conceptualizations. And now move on to more theoretical state involvement cybersecurity, and then give you a framework and the case of Japan, and then move on to conclusions. So I'll be speaking through some of these definitions and conceptualizations. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask after the presentation has ended. So to start with, my research team is centered around the role of state in cybersecurity. And due to the uniqueness of the Japanese case, I decided to utilize a research framework from the Cavalti and Nicholas 2019 article. The main research questions I've answered in my work are, number one, what are different roles of the Japanese state in cybersecurity? And second, why does Japanese state prioritize some roles over others? To give you some brief background information about what we'll be talking about. First of all, cyberspace is briefly described what is the widespread interconnected digital technology. It has become a buzzword since 1990s. And what is important for us political scientists is that cyberspace is now accepted as one of the dimensions of national security, as the fifth dimension. To conceptualize, you can see that national security is divided into 5 dimensions now: the land, sea, air, space, and finally cyberspace. And to move on to the cybersecurity aspect of cyberspace, cybersecurity is briefly described as the practice of protecting systems, networks, and programs from digital attacks. It has become buzzword since 2010s, and now cybersecurity is a policy area for the state that is consistent of national security as well as international politics. Once again, to briefly show you what cybersecurity is consisting of, we can say it is consisting of national security as well as international politics. And now let's move on to the main components of what the state can do for cybersecurity policy. There are 3 main components, and instead of reading all of these through, let me show you the conceptualization, starting with the first one, the defense component. The defense component can be divided into security and offense. And furthermore, you can divide the security aspect of defense component to citizen security, the critical infrastructure security. And of course, for the offense side, you can divide into offensive capability and the military operations that are consistent of what the army and the navy does, and so on. Second of all, the economic component of cybersecurity policy can be divided into as well. That is a continuation of economic activities and seeing cybersecurity as an area of investment. When we talk about continuation of economic activities, we talk about protection of IPs, intellectual properties. and of course, protection of market activities. And for the area of investment, seeing cybersecurity as an area of investment, of course, it is related to capacity building. And last but not least, the third component of cybersecurity policy is the political component, which is divided into domestic and international. For domestic, we can see that there is a continuation of governance and maintenance of state legitimacy. And as for the international aspect, we can see that it's international relations that are important. Having talked about these components of cybersecurity policy, let's now focus on the state involvement in cybersecurity in general. Now, when we talk about states and cybersecurity, you can come up with an image like this. We can say that it's an anarchy-based system where there is no overarching authority that is governing over the entire cyberspace. We can say that there are states, there can be individual actors such as hacktivists, there can be groups, and there can be organizations. So to make sense of all these actors, I decided to come up with a classification schema. As you can see in this table, you can see on the left side, you can see actor size, given from large to small, starting with state and going all the way to individuals. And for the to make sense of these actors and what they do, we can take a look at their motivations. There can be the self-satisfaction or personal belief for individuals. There can be economic benefits, and there can be national security or organized faith. However, we won't be talking too much in detail about the other actors today. They will be the topic of another presentation. We'll be focusing on the state, because the state, given the anarchical situation in cybersecurity, we can say a state is the sovereign cybersecurity actor. All these other actors, they're not sovereign. They can be groups, individuals, but they're not sovereign actors. So I'll be skipping through some of these information since we are pressed for time. But let me explain to you the justification why we should focus on the state. Because as it has been talked about in the post-Cold War era, there has been expectation that the global governance will take place of the state. However, the state actually made a comeback in recent years. And we can see examples from the Russian-Ukraine separation, the Brexit, the rise of isolationism in the US, and of course, the management of the current COVID-19 outbreak crisis. Now, another justification for why we should focus on state involvement in cybersecurity is that state is the sovereign actor. And when we talk about cybersecurity, the issue of global governance and cyber sovereignty is a huge issue. When it comes to global governance in cyberspace, there is a group of scholars who think that since internet was built by a broad coalition of state and non-state actors, that there is no sovereignty of the state in cyberspace, and instead it's global governance. However, in recent years, the cyber sovereignty paradigm has become more stronger, replacing the global governance argument. It's because one of the major cyber security actors, the US, it has accepted that instead of having the global governance argument, it actually takes on the realist perspective and divides cyberspace into American cyberspace, Russian, etc. And of course, the most recent Talent Manual by NATO, it has accepted that cyber operations might violate another state's sovereignty and might lead to application of international law. So we can see that the state is the largest and the most important sovereign actor in cybersecurity. Now, we know that with each different state, we focus on different levels of economic growth and different levels of development. And of course, this means that as the level of economic investment is linked to the level of adoption of ICT, that cybersecurity and how important it is, how it is handled, and the significance for each state varies. So we can say that some states, they can show more orientation toward the offense part, and some states can show more orientation toward other components of cybersecurity policy, as we have talked about. Now, as an example of these different orientations, let's move on to the case of Japan. And before starting on the case of Japan's specifics, let me give you the theoretical framework I have used. Now, for Cavalti and Eglo's paper in 2019, they have analyzed bibliographical data and policy documents and policy papers. And they investigate general role of state along 3 dimensions. Number 1 is theoretical, the second one is empirical, and the third one is normative. In my presentation, the most important part we should focus on is the first one, the theoretical dimension. The roles of state is highlighted by current literature and issues imposed by them in this Cavalti and Eglo's paper. And of course, theoretical dimension includes the literature review of role of science and Scopus articles. And these two authors, they have carried out close inspection of site articles. So without getting too much into details of their work, let me just give you the most important part we need to talk about, which are the 6 main roles of state according to Kelvin-Eklund's analysis. Of course, we should remember that this is not these authors' own formulation of the roles, but instead it is what is found in the literature already. So we can talk about the state acting as the guarantor or protector, which might mean that the state must secure its own civilian and military networks. The second one is legislator and regulator. And of course, this is a given that state needs to create the legal basis to support and clarify its hierarchical function. The third one, supporter and representative of society. State in this role advocates for beneficial international frameworks for the benefit of whole society. It can act as a partner. And the most importantly, the fifth one, the knowledge creator and disseminator. State raise awareness on cyber issues among the public as a major policy endeavor. State wants to perceive as trustworthy source of information. And last but not least, the state can act as originator of more cyber insecurity, which means that there are unfortunately cases of states that interfere with the civil rights, and they can act hostile to other foreign nations. Among these 6 main roles, we need to focus on the third and the fifth, because in the case of Japan, I have found out the role of the state as supporter and representative society and knowledge creator and disseminator is more dominant over other roles. To give you more evidence about the Japanese state acting as a supporter and representative society, I have taken a look at the 3 generations cybersecurity strategy policy guidelines. These guidelines, they're produced every 3 years, and they're produced by the NIC, the National Center of Incident Readiness and Strategy of Cybersecurity of Japan. NIC acts under the cabinet, and it's directly reporting to the Prime Minister. Now, when we take a look at the 3 generations of these policy guidelines, I have come across the main points of emphasis on safe operation of Tokyo 2020 Olympics and Paralympics as one of key policy issues. This might come across strange that why is it included in the cybersecurity policy guidelines? However, it is related to the international representation of Japan as peaceful and part of the international community. And in the 3rd generation, which is released this year, the new key policy issue is that digital technology promotion is a part of fulfilling United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And last but not least, the slogan of the 3rd generation policy guidelines has become cybersecurity for all. And what it means is that it is about ensuring a free, fair, and safe cyberspace. I have highlighted the A before the free because there is now more emphasis on creating a safe, fair, and safe cyberspace for Japan. Now, to give you more evidence that the Japanese state is acting as a supporter and representative society in the international arena, we can take a look at the Basic Act on Cybersecurity, which has been promulgated in 2014, from Chapter 1, Article 3, and Provision 4. We can take a look at that the cybersecurity policy must be advanced through international cooperation with the principle for Japan to assume a leading role in the formulation and development of an international cybersecurity framework in consideration of the fact that Japan's economy and society operate within the context of international close interdependent relationships. This is a very important evidence that hints at that Japanese state takes its role as a supporter and representative society very, very seriously. And last but not least, it is part of my paper, and I hope you guys get to read it, that there's an interesting project that is NIC carried out with ASEAN in 2015. This joint project is about a translation of posters, which has been prepared by Japan's IPA, Incident Preparation Agency. It's about awareness about password security among youth. Now, before showing you that, we know that Japan is pretty famous for its manga and anime, and they actually capitalized on this international presentation to create awareness about passwords. If you look at the story that is presented here, you can see that they have taken the stereotypical manga characters into spreading awareness about using simple passwords or making sure that you don't use your password as a date of birth, etc. And of course, the heroine crying in relief that I'm glad that I have a stronger password. This is very important that, you know, the state is using its international representation to forge more cybersecurity. Now let's move on to the Japanese state acting as knowledge creator and disseminator. Once again, if you go back to basic act of cybersecurity, if you look at the Article 3 in Chapter 1, we can see that cybersecurity policy must be advanced with the principle to proactively respond to cybersecurity threats through coordination among a variety of actors.
Elif, time is over. Please come to conclusion.
All right. And let's move on to the facts behind the prioritization of why this is so. We can see that it's the institutional heritage that comes from the development state and the constitutional restraints and the political to identity of Japan. Now, to offer you the brief conclusions, we know that cybersecurity is a new field and there's constant change. And I have looked at the case of Japan because it has offered a unique case study. And as a result of this undertaking, we know that cybersecurity, it offers the state act in different roles. And the most prominent roles Japanese state plays are the knowledge creator disseminator and representatives for the society. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Elif. Thank you for these beautiful presentations and also keeping straight up with the time. So we completed our presentations. When I checked our checkbox, I didn't see any questions. So if you have any question, please raise up your hand. Do you have any questions?
I actually have a question for Dr. Nath.
Please just go ahead, Elif.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much for your presentation. On your slide 10, you said that culture is preserved, detaching itself from politics. I was going to ask you, is there no chance to preserve, you know, at least parts of culture by embedding it into politics?
Mostly the idea of preserving culture is seen from a very, again, cultural concept. It's mostly very sociological orientation. Most of the time when culture is a basic reason for where there's political conflict, we don't see culture and politics as an integrated concept where countries are working on it, except when in one or two cases, indigenous communities, which are aboriginals, are affected, which becomes a huge protest in the country. But largely we have seen that culture and politics doesn't, that is not connected when security paradigm is seen. Every government tries to play ignorant. Every government tries to avoid working on those lines where you need to, safeguard the communities. Mostly they're eliminated, they're persecuted, or they're ignored, or their rights are prohibited. So you can see it's completely an ignorance or neglect that happens. Possibilities, you can see how the extremism is rising in countries, which is also leading governments to become more and more rigid and more extreme in their policies also. So the need is, yes, it has to be done, but it doesn't work out that way in real politics, as we have been saying.
Very much.
I hope I've answered. I have a question for Veronika, because she was working on diplomacy. And I just need to understand if Veronika is here, because I do not know, because I can't, it's just a very interesting two-track diplomacy. It's Veronika who did two-track diplomacy, right? So, isn't it? So two-track diplomacy is one of the, apart from public diplomacy, we see two-track diplomacy to be the way of solving problems across politics, society and all. But since we see a lot of extremism on both sides, left or right extremism, going in the world, and governments are putting more and more restrictions on civil society coming forward and protesting, which is also what governments are feeling insecure. So somewhere down the line, I feel the challenge that government is posing is on two-track diplomacy, because they would still like to keep public diplomacy, the government agents, one-on-one diplomacy option open, rather curtail. And many countries across the world, let's take India, for example, a lot of NGOs and civil society bodies have been, completely banished, or their licenses have been, struck down. So two-track diplomacy, while I was just recalling, because we see so much of NGOs and CBOs are becoming completely on a decline. So how do we restore two-track diplomacy? Like, how do we do that?
You mean in the places when it's forbidden for example, when there is democracy is restricted, yes?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, actually, we should turn to the democracy restriction. And if the democracy is restricted and the free speech is restricted, also it's not possible, of course, for freely the working off track to diplomacy as it's natural, of course. It is more possible in places when some groups, some leaders, some official leaders can work freely, can include social society into this. Then we should, I think, turn to the road, and firstly the democracy should be in place, and then it's a possibility for making solutions by track to diplomacy.
Absolutely, I think democracy has to be restored.
Thank you for the question. I hope so.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much, Anna. And so I can have one more question. So we have to finish this section because we are already exiting time. If you have a question, just I can have one more question.
If no one has a question, I have one more question. Can I go ahead with the question?
Yes, please. Yeah, go ahead.
I would ask a question to Ikram, who has discussed on Libya, I guess. So I was just thinking when you were highlighting on the political and other scenarios, you know, leadership, the women leadership, Libya is famous for some women civil rights movement also. The women role in leadership in Libyan politics. So as you were discussing so much about economic, political and mitigating factors and the middle ground and electoral democracy, so how do the women movement gets to revive or be part of the political process? Because as you were talking about what is to be needed in Libya, so how do we picture again the role of women coming back to Libyan politics?
Thank you so much for your question. Like I say in the first, that the Libyan situation now need the economic solution. It's logical that political solution, but it's in order to have this solution, you must back in the advantage, or you must back in the revenue of oil, because of the importance of this oil go to the other side, go to the foreign actors. If these actors now really this importance and this reality, they can give solution. This first. The second thing which I say that logically, domestically also, that a middle ground candidate should gain the majority of support from the international committee, because the Libyans have not just now have not voted from which people, which government, which person represent themselves, represent Libyan citizens. So the solution, or the, what can I say? I can't give the solution, but I propose that it must begin with economic solution. That's why I give this point.
So thank you very much. Thank you.
You
Thank
are.
you so much.
You are.
Okay, Anna, hope you got your answer. We have to finish this section here. So thanks to all participants and presenters for their participation as well as their contributions. And also I would like to thank to the chairmen of the next panels, Professor Ismail Köse, for his patience as well as the understanding. Sorry, we exceed the time. And so please, dear Professor, forgive us. And have a good day to all of you. Okay, have a nice day.